Hi, Simon. Thank you so much for joining me in this podcast episode. Really appreciate it. How are you today?
I'm really well, looking forward to it and sharing what we're going to discuss and exploring the conversation. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. I'm super excited learning more about yourself and also your book, Chaos to Clarity. And we're going to have a discussion on it. And you're going to show a few pointers on the book, why you written, and what can
Yeah.
impact on our audience. So before that, I'd love to know more about yourself. How did you become an entrepreneur? Why did you choose the entrepreneurship journey?
I don't think it was a choice. I started doing business as a kid. The classic, at school, somebody wanted some sweets. There's a local shop near me. You'd buy them for 10p, give them to the kids at school, and it sort of went from there and discovering the joy of wholesaling. Now, if you think about it, that lovely movie, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I'm sure inspired me, the chocolate selling sugar stuff. But that wasn't where I carried on my career. But like many of us, it was just what you did. There wasn't lots of money floating around. There wasn't lots of pocket money. And so it just became that natural thing to do. And
Mm,
to be honest, we didn't call. I'm 45 in literally a few days, right? It wasn't called being an entrepreneur back then. It was just getting on with things.
yeah.
Um, there was no fancy title. There was no giant role models in the way we have in this whole ecosystem today. It just went from there. So by the time I was 18, I'd already done Tai Chi, was teaching Tai Chi, merchandising for that, running club nights, university. And also, I think part of it is just being around interesting people. So when you get around interesting people, they have ideas, they have projects, and you just get involved and you help, and then it grows from there. And while I had a professional career that was very corporate, so PricewaterhouseCoopers, Morgan Stanley, Royal Bank of Scotland, ABN AMRO, the whole investment banking world for 10 years,
Yeah.
in parallel, I had friends that were salsa teaching or doing photography and or doing theater or coming up with a new business idea or a new project. And their friends would always say, talk to Simon. And so you sort of get into it that way. So I don't think it was a cunning plan. Although for those of us old enough to remember the only Fools and Horses show in the UK, remember that one?
Yeah.
So those were the sort of things that were around, and I think at some level sort of inspire us. So there was always that aspirational goal that drives us in business. And then as I've gone on, it's more and more about paying it forward, those mentors from the past and the ways that we sort of see to make a difference, which I think really is the big driver. I won't go to all the family history, but my mum caught polio as a young girl, had some stuff, my own dad living growing up. So this whole thing of how can you help and how can make a difference is really the crux of my entrepreneur business DNA. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing. So, how old are you when you started your business? Curious to know.
Which one? So, age 10, I was already doing bits and pieces. By the time we were 13, we were
I
building
know,
a
like
lot
your
of
serious business when you incorporated your name on it and everything, like a
over
serious
20
business.
years ago. So literally as I was, the whole setting up in business came around university,
Hmm.
especially where we're running drum bass nights.
Okay.
So we started running club nights and not little ones. We had Goldie, Groove Rider, SS, the biggest names in the thing were coming through, and we had the best drum bass night in the Northeast. Possibly a year before that, I started doing student marketing for IPC magazines. Now,
Yeah.
that name isn't that well known, but Enemy, Melody Maker, Music, Loaded, and working with a company called Get Real Marketing that helped bring a little drink called Red Bull out in the UK. So we did a lot of student marketing, but I was a student. It was naturally there. So yeah, over 20 years, 20 years now in what we've been doing. But it also goes back with my partners that have been around for a long, long time. And so sort of fingers in pies from the early days, really. That's me.
Yeah, learning from them as well. So it's great. Like 20 years in business is a long time, 2 decades.
It feels like a lot longer. And we were just
Yeah.
talking last night, one of my business partners, about, the joy of Mr. Beast. That
Yeah.
was not predicted 10 years ago. Some of the things we did predict, but some of what's happening now just wasn't on the radar. And
Yeah.
so it's a very different system, different time. But yeah, it's been a long time, and hence I've been through cycles, which my earlier self didn't know there was to go through. And it's part of what gives me a perspective that I hope is helpful today, having been through so many startups, so many projects, successes and failures over the 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And time flies, isn't it? Like when you're actually running your business, time flies. And
Yeah.
I started in business in 2014 and it's nearly 10 years now. So it's like a
Yeah,
nine
it
years.
goes really quick, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So uh you've been so experienced in the business world and you've done so many successful businesses. So why did you come up with the book called Chaos to Clarity?
New book, Chaos to Clarity. I'll do as in Blue Peter, one we made earlier, right? So Chaos to Clarity. Um, well, primarily what we've noticed, and I don't know about your friends, your connections, a lot of people are sort of questioning what's important.
Yeah.
They're looking at what they should do, what they should focus on. And even just then, as we talked about it, your video screen went a bit chaotic. So
Yeah.
part of it is it's actually the nature. And if I look back at one of the things I've found challenging, people go, so who are you and what do you do? I've been the guy that's helped them get into that clarity space. While I'm somewhat public, yes, I've been on television and stages, I've generally been a behind the scenes person. And what I got driven by some health challenges was like, look, if this was my last year, that was my last thing I'm putting out, what would make the difference? The subtitle might sort of surprise you, which is how to get out of your own way and remember what really matters. And we touched on 20 years in, 45 in a few days. Some of the things I thought mattered in my 20s didn't. Some of the things that we thought were required to launch a podcast, to launch a book, to launch a company, they really weren't. And so there's my friend calls it mechanics and magic. There's the inner mindset that you've grown as over time, whether that's as a father, a mother, a friend. There's you maturing as an entrepreneur and what drives you. And then also there's this mechanics of things that actually need to focus on that make a difference. The classic one is everybody goes, I'm launching a new company, and they spend 6 months on a logo and that's all they do. And then go, I've launched. Like, no, but have you got any customers yet? And like, what's this?
No.
There's the biggest thing I find is actually prioritization and resources. Right. Now, clearly, you and I are talking in 2023. We've had a very chaotic time with lockdown, with COVID, with other things that are going on. We are closer to a world war than ever before. And this question of how do we navigate the short term and the long term? How do we focus on what really can make a difference to us and what matters to us, our communities, our friends, our families, before it's too late? And I don't know about you. If I could have known what I know now 25 years ago, I might have made different choices. And to be blunt, I lost a couple of friends in the last few years, sadly, with the big C, and it happened very quickly. And you do find yourself going, I wish I'd spent more time with that. I wish I'd done different things in those moments. And Jim Rohn talked about it, how regret raised tons. So the hope of the book is teaching people how to navigate in a different way. And really, it's everything I've learned with Pulse Dot Reset, with the banking mission control stuff, and trying to make it in a way that people can start to have that entrepreneur journey she touched on sped up. I love how your camera's phasing in and out today as we talk about it, right? It's the joy technology. So we are in a time where there's more available, more opportunities, more change. And if you're trying to keep things as they were 50 years ago, 20 years ago, that's not going to work. So we have to step into being this person that navigates in chaotic times in whole different ways. And as an entrepreneur and a business person, that's the nature of it. There's going to be change. There is chaos, which is unpredictable, and yet you can learn to navigate it like a great surfer or a great windsurfer.
Yeah.
Hopefully that gave you some insights on it.
Yeah. Thank you. So you mentioned a few things like inner mindset, which is like really important for us.
Yeah.
So if you can elaborate something on what is inner mindset and why we need as an entrepreneur.
Okay, so one of the things they talk about with the low five, there's your mindset, your mood, your mouth, your attitude, and such on. So the mindset and the mind are very similar, but it's really the core way you look at life, the way you're approaching things. The worlds of ontology, the way of being, and the worlds of NLP will talk about like your beliefs and your values, and that's definitely part of it. There's this quality of being a human, which is what drives us. A little glitch with the video recording. There's you like throwing your stuff on the floor and going, it's evil. And the other going, oh, we'll handle it, no problem. How you handle it's happening again now as we talk. How you handle those things in life is a function of your mindset and your mood. And you can learn to make a shift in that area. And especially strategic over time, it makes all the difference. So, for example, when the train's late for work, when the phone line stops working, when there's a glitch in technology, when we have a health challenge, how we approach those can make all the difference. And the entrepreneurial mindset, focusing from it's not possible to it's possible, focusing groundedly into how can I make what I see possible a reality, is a maturity that kicks in. Learning how to focus on relationship capital and strategic relationships makes all the difference. Learning how to navigate and discern, where it's your own thoughts from the past, often from fear and limitation, which you'll bring into the current conversation. And aspects of that inner nature is such a rich world. And people can get down a weird loop. They can spend hours and hours going, and why did I do that? And, that was because when I was 7, I saw a dog at the park and I was scared. And so I must never, ever do this ever again. And you can spend hours in therapy. It's great. But there's a certain aspect of learning when to apply those things usefully to make a difference. So sometimes there are actually blind spots, scotomas that you
Mm.
don't know about yourself. Like it would be like if I didn't know I wore glasses and didn't have much hair. And
Yeah.
you'd be like, but Simon, you wear glasses. No, I don't. And suddenly you realize that the glasses are all fuzzy. The
Yeah.
glasses haven't been cleaned. And it's like that with our inner worlds. And it's also this aspect of what matters and how we value and how we think is useful. Because the truth of it is, the world doesn't operate the way we think. The world operates the way the world operates. And we have a sense of it in our experiences, which usually aren't the whole data set. There are things out there, people, conversations, relationships we have no idea about, but which actually impact the world we live in and our clients live in and the business world lives in. So the inner world can make all difference. And linked to that is also meditation and mindfulness, learning
Mm.
how to be able to navigate very quickly in the moment. I was very lucky. I came across Tai Chi, Tai Chi Chuan when I was about 14 years old, 20 plus years in, won gold medals, did really well with it. But it gave me an ability that when really stressful things were happening on a banking trading floor, in a business deal, that ability to take a breath and pause, not quite wazoo like in that movie, but
Yeah.
that ability to actually recognize I'm not centered, to come back to it of being responsive, not reactive. Now, to be fair, we are all human. We have good days and bad days. If I stub my toe, I still go ouch and possibly feel the words and try and reset, but I can notice it about myself. And often I think in the entrepreneur world, people are making judgments or decisions, but not when they're in the right headspace.
Mm. It's
Now, I
true.
don't mean that they're in that space of, and did that because I had to. And it's like, but you knew it was wrong. They're not listening to that inner knowing, or they haven't discerned yet when it's good, when it's bad, when to be in the space of choice. So it's a lot of rich area for entrepreneurship. And it's one that often doesn't get talked about, this business philosopher. One of my clients thinks of me as a Yoda of business. I find it's a funny acronym, but like, what do you mean? Not green hairy guy. But no, it's this business aspect is so different. And you see it. I've got one of our friends has turned 42, done very well in the UK, very well known entrepreneur person. And I've watched him turn from the person I first met when he came to London, being, no, I just want to be on their boats and be around that, to now somebody running accelerators, doing investment, and very much leading that conversation and watching him shift. Now, it doesn't mean I want to be that person, but you watch how people grow in that
Mm.
way. And if you know that, then you can do the work or get a mentor, coach, somebody to help you give that mirror to help you shift what you're doing as well. And
Yeah.
that itself, being able to be coachable, is an inner mindset. Most people go, I want help. And you say, okay, try this. No, 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 no. It's like, no, but did you want help? That's how you fix the problem. There's a
Yeah.
great,
Okay.
slightly naughty sketch about the nail in the head on YouTube. You can find it. So there's a nail in their head, and it's very clear. Like, no, no, don't mention the nail. Don't mention the nail. It's like, it could be your nail, Simon. Nope, no, don't mention the nail. And
Yeah.
it's so often we get like that. We get on our own analysis paralysis. We get in our own headspace, and we forget, hence the book, to take a breath, to be present to what really matters,
Mm.
focusing on the people we care about, and focusing on what we could grow in the future, which is really quite extraordinary.
Yeah. Now I like the fact you said meditation, where I'm focusing on right now. Last 2 weeks I've been trying that and haven't figured out yet, like actually what I need to be. I'm not able to use it because right now I've got agoraphobia. So certain too many people, I had some trauma in past few months back due to my illnesses, and right now I'm trying to figure this out. But every time I try to go for my fears, I can't handle myself yet because
Yeah.
the breathing and everything I'm doing, but I tend to forget these things when I actually facing my fear, and I start to shake and everything. So how long do you think like it takes in order to get to the level where I can control myself with the meditation?
Well, so that's a really interesting question. And I've been lucky to study different techniques from the East to the West,
Yeah.
some that are very old, some very modern. The truth of it is, transformation itself can happen really, really quickly.
Mm.
But it depends at what level you're having to shift. So,
Yeah.
for example, you and I have been around London. I've experienced some really quite traumatic, dangerous things in London, from bomb scares and other things in the terrorist days. And it is a shift. So there is sometimes a primal grounded hardwiring and
Mm.
something other bits and pieces. So truthfully, and this is a bit of an example of the sort of slightly subtle stuff we do. It's possible that thing can transform like that in a moment. You could open your door and go, you know what? All the stuff that was worrying me now left behind in the past. Now I can move forward, take those useful lessons, thank you, and share. Now
Yeah.
that itself wasn't occurring as coaching and therapy, but it kind of is. And there's a whole world of talking therapy. Now, if you go to Hawaii, to the kahunas, they'll
Mhm.
tell you about I Ho'oponopono. Have you ever come across that Ho'oponopono?
No, no.
So they would talk about, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And people can do clearing for others. You actually can remove that from the system. Now, some of what I think you've got going on is probably some hardwire reactive experiences.
Yeah.
Something happened, you do this, and it tricks the system. And the body is really good at making chemicals. You have an amazing factory that goes adrenaline, cortisol, endorphins, right? So part of the thing is not stopping anything, but replacing a new behavior. Now, that can be done with some NLP, with hypnotherapy, with hypnosis, with shamanic stuff, with Eastern stuff, with meditation. Part of it is knowing it's there. And the hardest bit, by the way, this is really paradoxical, because it's a thing that's important for you, there's energy and focus at it, which actually other things wouldn't have so much energy, so they go away. So when you have this, like, I've got this huge thing to handle, you actually end up creating this tension around it that can take some time to lose. So here's the good news. You didn't have this your entire life. It was a learned behavior. So that's the good thing, is you've learned this, you can learn something else. But it might be this roller coaster. It might be this balance point. It might be about learning some bridge techniques to go, look, I'm not going to go run around in a pair of shorts next to square in 2 seconds going, hello, look at me. I can take it one step at a time and just take one step out. Cool. Come back. And putting structures and environments in place that give you that. The truth of it is also
the fear, right? Slowly, step at a time.
Yeah, and fear itself is a really interesting thing, depending on which frame you're in, right? Very few of us have an actual saber-toothed tiger hungry about to eat us. It's like that would be a fearful. But equally, even then, the helpful thing is to be aware of it and take action and be with it. So often there's this false expectations appearing real, they say. There is this future perspective, and then we're living into a future driven from the past. There's a great video about no fear in the now. So look, this isn't trying to fix you in therapy. I think the truth of it is we have been through a very traumatic time where the environment itself has been very traumatic, hence chaos to clarity, right? There are real fears. One of my clients today I spoke to, she has a very bad asthma activity that for like years, in her 70s now. And she's worried that if she goes out and catches COVID or a bad illness, that will take her out. That is a grounded Western medical fear. Now, some would say what you focus on grows. So let it all go. And this is where we get into you as an entrepreneur, as an individual, navigating on what works for you. I personally think you, with a couple of good NLP hypno sessions, would see a difference. But then we also have to do the work every day. You have to go right and apply those skills. And I've always been a big believer, and I know I sound like a sort of a Southern guy from the UK here, but frankly, from up north, I want to empower people to not need our help. So it's much more different if you know the technique. Oh, wait a minute, I'm getting stressy now. Here are 3 things I can do, right? I can close my eyes, take a breath. I can do that mantra. I can go, right, and actually the first thing they say is awareness of something is the first point of change. So even just noticing, you know what, I'm not doing enough sales techniques. I'm not going outside. I'm getting anxious, aren't I? Interesting. And celebrate that. What most of us would do is go, oh, it's really bad. Boo. No. In that moment, go, I've noticed something, because that's you get this pausing, stopping, resetting. That gives you the chance, the space to go, and then depending on your paradigm, your school of thought, your inner subconscious will take care of you. Your divine guides will help you out. You can apply your new SAS techniques to move forward. But that bit of being already the headspace you're in, which is what can I do to improve it, is what most entrepreneurs have to learn to get into, because it's good days and bad days. One of my old school friends I ended up with, he magically got himself to being worth about £10 million and then was £4 million in debt a year later. I won't go into how. He had a bad experience with the investment deal, completely not his plan, and he was at breaking point. Now, thankfully, he's still here. But we all have those moments where you think, I can't go on, dark night of the soul. Catching that and having that support to inner and outer to move forward is so important. So long answer to a short question. It's going to take as long as you would like it to take.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
And equally, there are some people that do have biochemistry things that may be a bit harder. One of my old friends in LA, she literally had been in a coma for 2 months with her brain had like shut off. And when she came back, some of those neural pathways were not there. But I do believe at some level we have a plasticity as a human to learn, to grow, to rewire. But I'm not sure I can grow like more arms out of my head. I think there's sort of the boundary lines, but it's an inquiry space between our thoughts, reality, business, and what is actually possible.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of my little pet subjects, by the way. People don't think of me as a coach and a therapy guy sometimes, but I spent 25 years being a therapist to therapist, a trainer of trainers, a coach to coaches, and exploring these modalities. One you might want to look at is Paul McKenna's havening method, by the way. The havening method is a great example of a business. Paul went from doing one thing and then leveraging that to research and then bringing together different therapies. And that whole model for curing trauma is an example where it hasn't yet been deployed globally. So part of what drives me, by the way, is there are great ideas that I come across that everybody should use and know about. Often they're really cheap or free, but nobody knows about them. And you're like, well, why not? What's that gap? So yeah, that's one for you, the havening method.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's why I asked you, like you showed some experience on the last time we spoke about it. So that's why I just asked the
Yeah,
question
it's good.
related to our topic as well. So yeah, let's move on to next question, which is like you mentioned about focus. So how
Yeah.
important do you think is a focus for like a running and growing a big business or even the small business?
Well, firstly, it's a really interesting subject because there's can we focus and what should or could we focus on, and then how. So most people go, I'm going to focus, and they'll do, I don't know, turn the music off in bits and pieces. Others will go, I'm going to focus and put music on. So there's definitely, I think, a personal style, a personal preference.
Yeah.
I do think one of my old friends, Jeffrey's passed away now, sadly, talked about the ability to focus consistently, pure focus for like 10 seconds, 30 seconds is very rare. I was very lucky, I think, with my martial arts and the fencing. One of the things we did, we got very good at actually having laser focus, this psi thinking of being like, that's what we're doing, nothing else. And not getting into everything about ADHD these days. It's always like, I'm being distracted by life. So when I'm doing this with you, I've literally turned my phone to airplane mode. That's not coming in, and I'm being where I am as best I can be. The meditation, by the way, will help you with that, with being more fully focused on the thing you're doing. I think definitely for an entrepreneur and business owner, you have to give energy to something over time. My friend loves natural living systems theories. You can't plant an oak, like an acorn, today and have the oak tree tomorrow that's, 100-year oak. That requires nurturing day in, day out, day in, day out. The fact that you and I are speaking was a skill we learned, developed, the interviewing skill, the presentation skill, the sharing skills. So focus is such an important thing. And the challenge is, one, learning to have that capacity to focus on the highs and the lows. When things are going great, everybody's coming supportive, it's easy to get focused until we get worn out. And if there's nothing going on and it's like, oh, this is really boring and hard work, it's easy to go, right, I'll do that tomorrow and put it off. So I think focus and prioritization are really, really important aspects. And one of the challenges, most of us today don't have a practice to take time to work out, what am I focusing on? What do I want to focus on, and how do I prioritize it? In fact, one of the best things for an entrepreneur with their coach, with their advisor, is to actually reflect on, like, where have I been focusing the last 12 months, in the last week, the last day? And today, like in the journal, in the Poor Start Research Journal, one of the questions we ask before you go to bed tonight, you'd ask yourself, what's the one thing that if I complete it tomorrow would make the difference? So it's like, what's that one small step, or the one thing that I'm saying today is my focus for tomorrow? Now, tomorrow, life happens. That whole chaotic nature. There could be, hey, you won the lottery. Hey, we're going to Vegas to watch a TV show. Hey, Oprah's coming into town to go interview her. All these things can happen. But if you're picking your North Star and then have a way to actually check if you're on track or not, you can focus and navigate it. Again, when we were kids, we had orienteering. We didn't have GPS and mobile phones. Nowadays, phone can tell you you're in the right direction. You're 5 meters, 4 meters, 3 meters. If you have the latest thing with, like, find your keys, the air tags, it will literally tell you how far it is, but you still have to put in, what am I looking for? So you could still have to set that focus and go, look, I'm focusing on that. And the truth of it is, if you listen to this show like now, the recording, well, that's what you're focused on. But most people can't actually focus on one thing. They will be doing this while watching 5 other things and having their focus separate, which isn't a bad thing, but it means you're not laser focused and actually getting results you could do if you went, right, I'll focus that to completion. Or I can do that for that period of time, see what results I get, and then we say pause, stop, and reset. So I think it's really important. And like, I think you're a good focus person. You've been doing more than one of the interviews, right? You've been
Yeah.
focusing on the subject, learning your skill, working through it, looking for guests. That requires focus. And sadly, when you see startups, they haven't got the team that keeps that alive.
It's
When I
true.
when I used to run drum bass nights at university, my first banking jobs, some of our first businesses, we had a team of people, some employees, some partners, but there was a physical location where
Yeah.
we went that made that easier. And for many of the people who are listening, I'm sure they're digital nomads, people working in coffee shops on mobile phone, like this is my office now generally, right?
Yeah.
Actually have more than one phone often. It's very easy to end up all over the place and not, here's where I am, here's where I'm going next, this is my long-term plan, right? And then we navigate it through. And it's
Yeah.
part of the theme of the book, to be honest. When you're clear who you are and where you're going and what's important and what that takes, you have that plan, then we can relax.
Mm.
Christmas dinner will happen next year, right? There'll be a big meal in your life planning. If you know how to cook the food, where to get the food and resource it, then you
Yeah.
can calm down. It doesn't necessarily mean being like highly stressed 24/7 hours a day. That often can get in the way.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, Simon, thank you so much for sharing those valuable lessons. And yeah, we're coming to the
You're
end of
too
the
kind.
show. It's been a great pleasure having you. So those who's listening, if anyone wants to learn more about you, your business, where's to find you?
Well, I'm one of those people, once you know my name, Simon Hedley, easy to find. The new book is chaos2clarity.com, and that's a pretty good place to start. So chaos2clarity.com, or just Google me or find me on the web on LinkedIn, and then from there, lots of other resources.
All right, thank you so much. So I wish you best of luck with your new book and the new year as well. The whole year is left. Have a wonderful one. And thanks for coming today.
Most welcome. Bye for now.
Thank you. That's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it, got some value from it. So, yeah, if you want to find Simon's book, go visit the website or reach out to him via Google, or you can find him on LinkedIn. So, until then, I'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care.